Hello, my name is Mike Gaines and this is Home Gains. Today we're going to talk about writing an offer. Are you writing an offer on a property that you know is going to be really hot, that you know a lot of people are going to want to buy? So you want to write your best offer, do the best things you can to make sure that your offer is picked by the sellers and you get to buy that property. The other type of property we're going to talk about is something that's been sitting on the market for 100 days and your buyer wants to buy it, but you want to make sure you get a good deal. So we're going to give you some tips on how to buy that property and secure that purchase for your buyer. Okay, let's talk about writing that offer. The first thing I want to do is I want to reach out to the listing agent and start to talk with them and develop a rapport, have a good relationship with them, be positive. Tell them about my buyers, let them know how easy my buyers are going to be to work with. Find out what the sellers are looking for. Find out what their timeline is. Are they going to sell the property as is? How do they feel about contingencies? These are all questions you want to start asking that listing agent as you start to develop that relationship. As you go through the process, you'll find that if you have a good relationship, things go much easier. And hopefully, when they present your offer, you're presented in a better light and you get the deal. All right, well, let's talk about contingencies. That's something that sellers are concerned about, buyers are concerned about. They can be a sticking point in a transaction, but if you take care of them the right way, they shouldn't be a problem at all. Contingencies are the period of time that a buyer has to investigate the property, put their loan together, and get their appraisal taken care of. So when you talk about contingencies, I always like to put that contingency release date all on the same day. If it's going to be 10 days of contingency, that's great. That way, when you get to that point, the sellers are anticipating that date as a contingency release. The buyers are working towards that date as a contingency release, and it should be a timeline that you can manage. For if some reason you need an extension on one of those contingencies, what I recommend is you release the contingencies you can. And then if the one of them, let's say you have to have an appraisal that takes a little bit longer to come in and you need to extend that contingency a day or two, talk to the agent before it's due. Don't tell them on the day that it's due that you have a problem. Let them know a few days before because the appraisers let you know that it's going to be delayed. And let them know that, hey, there's a little bit of a delay. We're going to need a couple more days to get this appraisal in. We'll remove everything else and it shouldn't be a problem. It gives them time to talk to the sellers, assure them that there's not any problems. And if you take care of this in a timely manner before it's due, the whole process goes better for the buyers and the sellers. Now, often you hear about people saying, well, I don't want any contingency. I'm going to write non-contingent. And sellers really like that. They feel that it's an easier process to close the escrow. But one thing to keep in mind, I don't mind if you remove your appraisal contingency or your loan contingency with your offer and say, I'm not going to worry about that. But the property inspection contingency, I think, is important. And I advise buyers and sellers to always at least put in 72 hours. And the reason being is in a hot market where you feel that you need to be ultra competitive and not have contingencies when you present your offer, you leave a little bit of liability out there. And if the buyer decides he gets the home, 6 months later, he's really unhappy about some aspect of the home, and he goes back and he says, I'm going to sue the seller because I wasn't given the proper amount of time to investigate this. I really felt that I was forced to do a non-contingent offer when I presented to secure the property, that now I feel like I've been cheated. And what happens is if you force the 72 hours, at least you give them both parties an opportunity to investigate the property. And if you have to go to court later, you can tell the judge, look, I tried to give them some time to investigate the property. I forced the 72 hours on them. It's not my seller's liability that they're unhappy now. When it comes to removing your contingencies and there's a problem and you want to have an issue resolved, you never use that problem as a bargaining chip. You don't say to the sellers, hey, we'll remove all of our contingencies if you give us a $5,000 credit to fix the deck or something like that. If there's a problem with the deck and you want to get a credit for it, it's something you address in a different form, a different document. It's a request for repairs, or you could ask the seller for a credit, but you do that prior to the day that it's due. If you're coming to the contingency removal, it's a couple days away, and you've got an issue and you've got a concern about something, you start talking to the listing agent then. You start saying, look, here's what we found in our investigation. We weren't anticipating this additional damage on the deck. Is there some way that the sellers can work with us on this? And you discuss this prior to the contingency being removed. So if the seller says, you know what, we're going to give them a $2,500 credit, you write it up an addendum, you put that in there, and that way you can remove your contingencies. Nobody feels pressured that they use those contingencies as a bargaining chip or a way to get an advantage on the seller. Always make sure your offer is complete, that you've checked all the boxes, that all of the information necessary is there. Any supporting documentation that you need to conclude with that offer is there. When you have a seller sitting at a dining room table and they've got 5 offers in front of them, they really don't want to counter. They don't want to send back a counter because you forgot to check a box or you forgot to put something in the offer that makes it complete. They would rather sign one of those offers that's sitting there that has a complete contract and they can just get it done that night. So I always recommend that when you put your offer together, have another set of eyes look at it, make sure that it's complete, that you haven't missed anything. That way, when you present your offer, you look your best. And remember, when you're writing your offer in a multiple offer situation, swing for the fences. Write your best offer you're willing to write. Be comfortable with your number, but that's the maximum you're going to spend. Don't think that you're going to write an offer to the sellers. They're going to look at it and say, well, we're going to counter them back for this amount. When they've got 5 offers laying on the table, they want to sign one of those offers and get it done. So swing for the fences, write your best, do your best presentation, and hopefully you get the deal. So if you don't get the offer, talk to your agent about being a backup offer. Sometimes that first offer that's accepted doesn't work out and it has to back out of the deal. You can be right in place to take over, the property doesn't go back on the market, and now your buyers are able to secure that property and you can move on and close the deal. Now it's time to talk about an old listing. Your buyer's seen this property, maybe you've looked at it in the past, they've gone by it a few times, they're still interested, but the price has got to be right, the terms have to be right. So what you need to do is you need to reach out to that listing agent once again, talk to them, build a good relationship, build a good rapport with them, and find out what's going on. Why hasn't that property sold? What are the sellers really looking for? What seems to be the sticking point that it's still on the market? If it's price, well, that's something that you have to consider. If it's condition, if it's just bad timing, all of those things can be factors to why a property is still on the market. So when you're talking to your buyers, you want to put together the best offer you can that doesn't insult the seller. You don't want the seller to say, oh, here we go, another low ball offer. I'm not going to work with them. As much information as you can gather from that listing agent prior to writing that offer is going to help you. Find out the numbers that came in before that the sellers wouldn't even counter or talk about. Try to get your buyer to write an offer, but what I always say is the lowest point that they would sign it. If you send it over and they sign it, that's awesome. But at least it's a point to work from and they're not insulted by a low ball offer once again. So advise your buyers, write the best possible offer you can to at least get the negotiation process going and see if you can put a deal together. Your buyers may not come to terms on that property to purchase it, but you want to stay in touch with that listing agent. As that listing gets older and older, you keep an eye on the clock of when it expires. That agent's going to want to really sell that property. More buyers may have come to the table, written something, and you may be able to gather more information from those offers that came in. But keep talking to your buyer about that property. Keep in touch with the listing agent. The listing agent, as that listing is about to expire, they're going to want to get that property off their books. They're going to want to get some sort of compensation for all their efforts and certainly want to do a good job for their sellers and sell the property. So if you stay in communication, you may have not gotten a deal put together the first time, but as time goes on, you may be able to put something together. So watch that property, stay in communication with your buyers about that property and make sure that their interest is still there. And hopefully at some point you put a deal together. All right. Well, I hope you found that information useful. You can buy a property that's really hot or something that's been on the market or anything in between with those tips. But if you have any questions about today's video or any questions about real estate in general, certainly reach out to me, send me an email. I'd be happy to respond. We can talk more about this or anything about real estate. Once again, my name is Mike Gaines and this is Home Gains. Have a great day.